Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Legal Insight sessions run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm for COVID safety requirements for community service organisations. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy Law Firm, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session really focuses on the key legal requirements for community service organisations, particularly as the rules continue to change right around the country. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly. Now, one of the changes that we are finding that is happening with the COVID safety rules is that there is a shift across from the public health and wellbeing legislation and emergency pandemic laws to really management of this under work health and safety guidelines. And what I mean by that is that there are now changes and policy directions that are really focused specifically around work health and safety and how community service organisations actually need to manage these specific requirements. What we will say straight up in terms of the recommendations is to look at accessing your Gemba 360 dashboard with your legal resources. This will include today's PowerPoint slides and the likes, and also you will get a copy of this webinar's recording as well too. We do also have a number of policy documents that you can also use, which I will show you in a few minutes. And also you can use what we call the Gemba 360 WHS form audit tool to check your compliance as well. Now, on that, let me just jump in and walk you through some of the resources that you do actually have access to. So with it, if you jump into your Gemba 360 dashboard, and you can actually look at some of your policies that you do actually have access to, and it will give you an idea of some of the resources that you do actually have available. Now, I will actually just utilize one of the what we call bush nursing agency sites just to show you where these resources are and what you can also utilize. Now, if I jump into one of these sites, here is a sandbox site. I can go to Gemba Docs, and what we actually have is under the policies section of this, you can actually look at your specific COVID policies. And we do have a range of templates that you can actually start using today. Now, that includes COVID policies. These include up-to-date policies on things like business operations policy, board reporting policy, privacy and confidentiality policy, COVIDSafe social gatherings, and in the past it covered travel restrictions. We have a work health and safety policy and a sample vaccination policy. And this all includes standard templates that you can actually utilize within your agency as well too. And it covers all of the specific legal requirements that your agency needs to meet. You will find that we do have the template set. So this way you can quite simply, if I just share my screen again here, you can actually just search and replace by inserting your agency name. And this allows you to actually have a full suite of policy documents that you can actually start to utilize and actually manage within your agency. Now, with it, to actually access this legal resource, you can just go to gemba360.com. It will open up this blue circle for you. Your username is quite simply your email address, and we will send you out a specific password for you to be able to use. When you log in, what you'll be able to see is the range of resources. You can access your Gemba Docs. We do also have what we call the HR area, which allows you to manage your vaccinations. And we have a number of tools on the left-hand side here. These includes COVID assessment templates as well too. And these are all legal resources that your agency does have access to. And it gives you the ability to screen your staff and clients as well too. It has a workstation assessment form as well too, and also a working from home form as well. All of these forms are there as part of the WHS support for your agency to be able to access this information very, very rapidly for yourselves to use. Now, with it, one of the areas that we did want to cover off in terms of was the actual rules as well. What you'll find is that there are a range of different specific requirements that your agency needs to follow. Now, if we go in, and what I will just bring up is the actual rules, the COVIDSafe rules that we are seeing at the moment. Now, within this, what you will notice, if I just bring these up, thank you for the session, is that you are able to view these directly off the site. And we have taken this information directly off the site. Now, going through it, let me bring this up. You will find that there are a number of public safety orders and also pandemic rules that agencies need to follow. Now, we have just brought up some of the Victorian ones. I will summarize these for you shortly, and this also includes human rights statements as well too. Now, essentially, the guidance under the pandemic orders in Victoria, for example, talks about this order relates to collecting, recording, and holding certain vaccination information of workers. It also means that there are still current requirements unless the worker is under 18 years of age for people to be fully vaccinated. And these essentially mean that you also do need to, as an agency, hold on to information for your staff working within your community service organisation. And that does actually include for both volunteers and also staff. Now, underneath these orders, to unpack some of these areas of what does this actually mean? Well, when operating a workplace, what you essentially need to have is that a worker must not attend a premises if they have undertaken a COVID-19 PCR or rapid antigen test and they are waiting for that results, if more than 7 days have passed since the date of that test. It also means that from a face coverings perspective, an employer, as the order says, must take reasonable steps to ensure a worker, when working at work, complies with any face covering requirements. Now, the complicating factor about this is that when you jump to these orders, it actually talks about the public safety order. And when we look at the public safety order, then essentially what we find is that the operator of a certain care facility that they're talking about here must also take reasonable steps to ensure that people's are covered. Now, what does this actually mean? And they have the significant amount of penalties that they are there. Now, when we look at, for example, things like the face covering requirements, for example, now it talks about a person must wear a face cover if they are in an indoor space that is publicly accessible area for a healthcare premises, or specific indoor space where they're in a prison, a police, a jail, remand centre, youth residential centre, youth justice centre, or post-sentence facility, or also while working in a hospital or even a care facility as well too. So there are still quite stringent requirements that are in place. Now, when we look at how long these orders actually will be in place, if we go back to actually looking at and unpack what this actually means, well, then what we can see is that essentially this order commenced on the 12th of July and actually ends on the 12th of October. So we're already seeing in some states like Victoria, for example, key directions that mask wearing and also directives about what work spaces must cover are in fact still quite very broad. And there's a number of agencies that have almost missed this particular requirement. But we are finding that these all are essentially being covered under really the work health and safety requirements that agencies must actually follow. So when we look at essentially what is coming up and what people need to consider, we are finding that in some states, even New South Wales and the likes, that there is still some rules around mandatory face masks. We're seeing that there are areas like residential care facilities for certain music festivals, for certain areas, all of which must actually still be covered. What we are also seeing, if we go back and have a look at other states as well too, is that some states are actually requiring agencies, for example, South Australia, to actually have a risk assessment done. Now, the risk assessment talks about managing work health and safety risks, and that it is an ongoing process, particularly when any changes affect your work activities. Now, this is actually quite broad, but we are seeing these risk assessments being required more and more across the different states. And essentially, all of them are asking for all currently operating businesses must assess the risks associated with exposure to COVID-19 and implement control measures to manage those risks. And they must also assess the new or changed risks associated with COVID-19. Now, this was taken verbatim from the South Australia mandatory legal requirements of what people must follow. Now, what we have done is take apart some of these risk assessments of what you need to consider. And how we have done that is by looking at what workplaces do look like, what are the specific COVID directions and policies from the different states and territories as well too, going back and looking at clients, personnel, and also people returning to work, and all of these requirements in terms of checklists that your agency needs to follow. And essentially, this is the table that we've actually come up with and pulled from different policy directions. Now, what we have done for agencies and a kind of a where to from here for you is that what we have actually done is actually go into your Gemba dashboard and try and make this as simple and easy as possible from a legal resources perspective. And with this, what we have done is put together all of the specific rules and come up with a checklist that your agency can start to use today. And so if I essentially log in, and I will just bring this up to show you what this essentially does look like as well too. And if I jump back in here, and I'll just bring this up for you. And let's have a look at what one of these actually look like. So essentially what we have done is go in and create the risk register for you. Now the risk register itself means that when you go in, essentially what you have, and if I bring this up for you to have a look at, here we are here. I click on the risk register button, and what comes up is this area here. And it's all set for you very, very nicely, and it's ready to go. So what we have on this is the ability for you to basically look at each one of these requirements and know which ones you need to meet. So essentially, if I open one of these up, what you will be able to see is essentially the specific requirement of what you need to meet, and also what you can fill out is essentially what you're going to do to actually action and meet this risk. And essentially what this gives you is the checklist for you to be able to manage all of your assessments that is being expected of you from a work health and safety perspective. These webinars that we are running are kept short to ensure that we can kind of show you what you've actually got access to and also give you a series of checklist tools that you can use. What we are seeing quite clearly is from a fair work point of view is a range of new rules that your agency must look at. What we are seeing is from a work health and safety perspective that the risk assessments is something that is being pushed by work health and safety, and it is something over the course of the remaining part of 2022 will increase as we see this for you as well too. So essentially, we've merged all of these legal requirements in for your agency. You are able to access all of these resources and be able to access all of this information directly. With that said, we have used our 20 minutes up at the moment. More than happy to stay online and answer any questions that you might have. If you are watching today's session if you are watching this webinar after today's live session and do have any questions, then by all means, please call us on 1300 360 360, or you can email us at support@gemba360.com.